All right. I did some tests with using Pytest. All right. So I have one model which has basically one property and string representation, and then I have a schema. Okay. So I have a schema here, and then I have one model here. All right. So I wrote some tests. I did some video earlier showing how you can use coverage to know what tests to write. So in this model, I only wrote test for string representation and full name. So these are the tests. Um, I'm using Pytest. So with Pytest, I really don't have to put my tests in a class, and that's one of the advantages. So I create an instance, and then I assert to see if the string representation is what it is supposed to be. And then for this test, I also test if it works whenever I have full names, three names, or two names. Yeah. So let me try and run the tests. So since I have coverage installed, I will run it the coverage way so that ideally I could just say Pytest and I run my tests. All right. So they are all passing well. Okay. Or I can run only the tests. I can only run the model tests. Perfect. Or I can only run the schema tests if I wanted. Perfect. Or in let's say in schema, okay, in model tests I could only run one test like this. Perfect. All right. So one test was run, but if I remove that, you see, collected one item. But if I run that, collected three items. So that's how I can run those tests. But let's say I want to see the coverage. I can use coverage. And again, this is already installed. If I say pip show coverage, it should show me that coverage is already installed. I did a video earlier on this showing that coverage can help us to know, our test coverage, basically what we are supposed to test and what we are not supposed to test. So I'll run coverage, run -m um, pytest, right? Perfect. So this runs it the same way, but the only difference is now that I can run coverage report -m. So I can run my coverage. You see, schema is up to 100%, and also this is also models is also up to 100%. You can show this in the HTML report and come here and open it with live server. Perfect, it's 100%. If I open here, I see that everything looks good, everything is tested. Perfect. Yeah, so that's it about running these tests. So I'm using Graphene basically, and this schema is basically I'm using GraphQL with Graphene. So I have one schema here, which I have like two queries here. So this is what I tested, and so just to go through briefly, so this is a client. So while writing these tests, we'll mimic like, okay, uh, so if I come here and I hope my server is running, just to demonstrate. All right, the server is running. So I already configured GraphQL. Yeah, so I'll just come here and say localhost GraphQL. So when I execute this, it returns very well. So when I'm testing, I want to be able to know that if I execute a query, it will give me the desired result. So this is like my client. I'm sort of executing a query now. So I want to be able to know that if I execute a query from the client, it will work as expected. Yeah. So we have this client class from Graphene test. So we pass it a schema, which is basically this schema in fed.hr schema.py. That's what we are passing mainly. So if I click here, it takes me back here. So we are passing it a schema, and we told that graphical has access to the schema through introspection. So when we pass the schema to the client, it will now be accessible to the client. So just quick one, we'll start with resolve testing the resolve all employees. So basically, we want to run a query against, to execute all, to get us all the employees. And if you are to see in the schema, basically we are just getting employee objects.all, yeah, so which returns everything. So we are creating basically two records in the employee model and executing. So not yet executing, but this is the query we want to execute. So basically, this is the same kind of query I would execute here. So like if I like copy this and paste it here and run, boom, it will just run. So this is the query we are going to execute. Now we execute it on the client, and then we get a result. And as you can see, so happens that the records I've put here, they are the same records I actually used earlier in my Django admin. So in my Django admin, I have two records. Uh, this is test data. It is different from what I have in Django admin. It's only that I use the same, records, but you shouldn't think that these two queries are creating this. No, I put earlier this in Django admin. I put it earlier manually, and then this is just test data. So when I execute this query, I expect data that looks like this, right? So I want to really assert and see if the result of what I'm getting after executing query is this. So and if you see that this, when you execute the query, we have data in this format, so data, open brackets, all employees, like that. So we want to test that the query is returning the data that we want in the format that it should be returned. Then we also want to assert and know that there are no errors in the result. For example, if I make an error here, for example, let me do something. We don't have name1. So if I do this, we can see that this returned object has errors. So this is basically what we are testing. It means that if we have these errors, then there's a problem. So we want to assert that errors is not in the result, and then we will know that our query runs well. Yeah, so the same thing. So there is something very important here. This pytest.mark.django.db. Now, Pytest by default does not have access to the DB. So you give it access when you write your test. You tell Pytest that, okay, I'm going to use a database in this method, or in this function, in this test that I'm writing. Yeah. So the way to do that is you add this decorator, pytest.mark.django, underscore db. That is well shown in the docs. If you check the docs, it's there. And if I actually remove this will give me an error. If I try to run the test now, boom. So I will get an error like database access not allowed. Use Django underscore DB mark or the DB or transactional DB fixers to enable. I will get an error. Okay, so because I'm trying to access a DB, like I'm trying to create data on a model and access the DB, so to say. Of course, this would be the test DB, but yeah, I'm having access to the DB, so I need to add this. Yeah, so that's it mainly. So what we are doing in this other one, same thing. We are basically are adding one record and executing our query. And what you see in this one, we are even passing a parameter uh, management, so to say. If I execute this, yeah, it should return me that. Okay, and remember that what I'm executing here is this data is from the actual DB. This is test data. This would be from the test DB, but it's just that I'm using the same records. So you shouldn't be confused that this is from the actual database. Yeah. All right. So the same thing, we execute the query on the client and then get the desired result, and also check if there are errors. Basically that. So this is how I was able to test these using Pytest, and I'll be sharing if I do more tests and other stuff that I may need you to know about. So thank you so much. Before I conclude, uh, you see here that by the way, every test that we are writing, as long as it begins with test underscore, so it will be considered as a test and it will be run. So that is pretty much automatic. And the way we are naming our files to be identified by Pytest are, we have Pytest configuration here, and so any test that is the files that have test.py, test underscore, anything that follows, and then underscore tests. So I decided to name mine like model underscore tests or schema underscore tests. So these are discoverable automatically by Pytest because it's already configured like that. There is another video where I show you how to, set up Pytest. So this should all be good. All right, fine. See you in another video.